Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm privileged to welcome a very, very accomplished social entrepreneur from Bangalore, India, Mr. Vishal Talreja. Vishal, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ashutosh. It's an honor to be here.
Thank you. Vishal is the co-founder and trustee of Dream a Dream, which is a registered charitable trust empowering children and young people from vulnerable backgrounds to overcome adversity and flourish in the 21st century using creative life skills approach. He's also a social entrepreneur, an educator, and a poet. Vishal is an Ashoka Fellow and an Eisenhower Fellow, and he's been recognized, felicitated, and awarded several times. So, Vishal, let's talk about Dream a Dream. What motivated you to focus specifically on empowering children and young people from vulnerable backgrounds?
Yeah, thanks, Ashutosh. That's a great question to start with. I was born and brought up in Bangalore, to typical middle class family. And I had no intention of actually moving into the social sector, working with kids. I was all set to work in the corporate sector, become an investment banker. When I finished college, I got a chance to go to Finland on an exchange program for a few months. And I was the first kid in the family to travel abroad. And I got an opportunity to see the world from a different lens. And for the first time, experience the idea of dignity of labor. And how every human being can be treated with respect, irrespective of the work they do and the backgrounds they come from.
Correct.
And I wanted to bring that idea back to India. So I came back and got together with a bunch of friends and said, let's do something on weekends. Now, none of us came from a social sector background. So we found a mentor who said, why don't you start working with kids? So we found a shelter home for HIV positive children and started working also with a group of cancer affected kids. Most of our work was on weekends, taking kids out on picnics or doing fun things with the kids. As we started spending more time with the children, we realized that what they craved for more than anything else was to be seen and heard, was not to feel invisible. And both cancer and HIV at that time had strong stigmas around them. So a lot of people would come and donate to the cause, but no one would actually spend time with the kids. And the kids always felt almost invisible and disregarded. But with us, because we were spending time with the kids felt safe, they felt seen and heard, they felt respected, and they got a sense of self-dignity. So that's how the journey started of working with children. I didn't choose to work with children. I think the children chose to find me.
Amazing.
So that's really where the journey started of working with children.
And you did mention one of the challenges children face is that they want to be seen and heard. But what are some of the other challenges children and young people face that you are addressing?
Sure. So we work primarily with children who come from vulnerable backgrounds, and we define vulnerability as children who face any kind of adverse circumstances in their childhood. This could be lack of food or nutrition, it could be neglect, it could be lack of emotional love and care. In extreme cases, it could be displacement, abuse, violence. Now, what we learned in the early years is that when children experience one or more of these adverse circumstances, it impacts their ability to achieve developmental milestones. And a simple way to understand that is that if there's an infant at your home, the infant is not going to suddenly jump up and start running.
Correct.
They're going to learn to sit up, they learn to crawl, learn to stand, learn to walk, learn to run. Now, each of those are called developmental milestones that happen at the right time. But when you face adversity, you miss those milestones, and not just physical, but also mental and emotional milestones. So our ability to, for example, understand and respond with emotions, our ability to recognize emotions, our ability to build healthy relationships, these get impacted. And these missing of the developmental milestones leads to what we call stunting or failure to thrive, which means that children are not growing age appropriately.
Correct.
And another simple way to understand that would be that, when we started working in care homes, which had largely abandoned or orphaned kids, when we walk into a care home for the first time, these kids come running up to you and they jump on you and they hug you and they tug at your shirt and ask you who you are and where you're taking them. They show a lot of love, and you feel this is amazing. These kids are so lovely and friendly. But if I came to your house for the first time, and if you had, say, a 9, 10-year-old kid, that kid is not going to come running up to me.
Right.
They're going to hide behind you, peek out, look at me suspiciously. And only when they get an indication from you that it's safe to say hello, come forward and say hello, they'll say hello and run away. Now, that's healthy behavior you want in every child.
Right.
Kids in care homes, because they have had experienced neglect or abandonment or being orphaned, it has led to their inability to build healthy relationships. So they form relationships very quickly. If that continues, imagine then at the age of 18, 19, 20, they end up in the wrong kind of relationships. It could be abusive or violent. So if you do not address the impact of adverse circumstances and failure to thrive in children, it leads to children being dysfunctional as adults. So that at the core is the challenge that we're trying to address.
Amazing. Thank you. What a great response. And Vishal, what inspired you to take a creative life skills approach? I've spoken to many people, they work on food, they work on education. I was fascinated when I read that you take a creative life skills approach. Help me understand this.
Sure. So again, in the early years, when we were working with kids from different backgrounds, let's take an example of kids in care homes. They get the basics met: food, clothing, shelter, access to education. And then we started understanding what happens to these kids when they grow up. And as per the law, at the age of 18, kids in care homes are expected to leave the care home and become independent. So we started asking the care homes, okay, so what do you think happens to these kids after they leave the care home? Most care homes don't track. Even when they were tracking, they suspected that these kids go back to the streets in a year or two.
Oh, wow.
And we were worried about that. We've taken care of them for 10 years, sometimes 15 years, and then you let them go and they're back on the streets. So what is missing? And what we realized is that beyond the basics, what these kids needed was a set of life skills. And life skills can be defined as any kind of positive adaptive behaviors and capacities that help an individual deal with challenges of daily living.
Right.
All of us use life skills on a daily basis. Right? Even the choice of, say, what we wear in the morning is a life skill. So choice making, decision making, managing conflict, having relationships, empathy, self-awareness, are all different kinds of life skills. And these kids were missing those life skills. So when they went out into the world, because of the lack of life skills, they couldn't cope and integrate into the world. And then they went back to their familiarity and comfort zone, which was the streets. And many a times more damaged than before.
Wow.
Right? Now the word creative life skills really came in saying, okay, now how does one develop these life skills? If I bring a kids into a room, and make them sit on chairs and tables and say, okay, today I'm going to teach you how to take decisions in life. No one's going to listen to me beyond 5 minutes and nothing's going to stick.
Correct.
So what we learned over a period of time is that one of the most powerful ways to develop life skills is when we have transformative life experiences. Now, if I ask you to go back into your own childhood and think of maybe 2 or 3 experiences that were transformative for you, you will immediately know which experiences you're thinking about, because we don't have too many of them. We have 3 or 4 of them. And these are typically either a powerful interaction with a teacher, or something that happened on the sports field, or something that happened in a club that you were part of, or in theater, or in debate or essay, whatever you were part of, or something that happened when you went on a trip with your friends and classmates. An experience that stays with you beyond the mind, an experience that becomes a memory also in your heart and body.
Right.
is a transformative experience. Even now, when you're thinking of that experience, something shifts in your body. You get shivers, or you get butterflies, or you get a
Correct.
smile on your face, right? So that was the idea, that how do we create transformative experiences that stick, which lead to children developing life skills, which they can use later on in life, wherever life throws challenges at them.
Phenomenal. Thank you. My next question is that, you've told me about how you are able to support them to develop some life skills. How do you engage with children and young people that you work with to understand their unique needs and tailor your programs to suit them?
Sure. So today we have a few different strategies. In Bangalore, we work with about 10,000 young people directly. About 5,000 of them in schools. So these are either charitable schools or government schools, where we run an after-school life skills program using sports and art as a medium to develop life skills. So these are typical once a week, 2-hour sessions where we have trained facilitators who use sport and art. For adolescents from the age of 14 onwards, we have 2 youth centers where the idea is, when a young person walks in, we don't give them a one-size-fits-all program. We spend time with the young person, understand what are their challenges, what are they struggling with, what do they need, and then create a journey with them which could last from anything from 3 to 7 years. It's a highly customized, personalized journey.
Okay.
And they can come in, walk into the center and just hang out if they want, play some board games or watch a movie or use the computer, or they can join a special program. It could be on financial literacy, communication skills, or specialized vocational skills like painting or beautician or robotics. So it's a highly customized journey that we create for young people. Now, this is what we call our innovation labs.
Amazing.
This is where we pick up our insights on what young people need, what's working, what's not working, what pedagogical approaches can be introduced. These are then translated into codified programs, either as curriculums or training approaches or pedagogical approaches that we take into the school system. So the way we do that is we work in partnership with state governments. Today we work with about 6 state governments, where we help them introduce new life skills focused curriculums. Like in Delhi and Uttarakhand, we have worked with other knowledge partners in the government and introduced a happiness curriculum, which is focused on well-being of children using our life skills approach. In Jharkhand, it's a whole child approach, where we work with a set of schools, government schools, in partnership with the government, on designing and delivering a whole child approach to education. Which includes academics, but also includes life skills. It includes mental health. It includes well-being. In Telangana, for example, we work with the Social and Tribal Welfare Department, which runs residential schools. There are focuses on helping them design a curriculum that's focused on self-identity and dignity for tribal kids. So these are different approaches. So our innovation labs help us get the insights. These insights are then codified and translated into specialized programs that we do in partnership with state governments.
Amazing. And given the amount of work that you're doing to impart life skills, are you also tracking some of the people who are graduating from your program, if I can use that term?
Sure.
And if yes, can you give me 1 or 2 examples without any names, of course?
Sure, absolutely. So in terms of just tracking our impact, there are multiple things that we track. One is just levels of attendance, engagement. Second is over a midterm, over a period of time that the young person is in our program, we track their development of life skills. So we have actually worked with child psychologists, clinical psychologists, and developed a life skills assessment scale, which is one of its kind, the first of its kind, published, validated scale to measure improvement in life skills for children from vulnerable backgrounds. So this helps us track each child's growth on life skills. And then in the long term, we track young people through an alumni network. So in our direct programs in Bangalore, over the last 10 odd years, we've been tracking over 17,000 young people. in what they're doing with life. And what we're looking for is, are young people who are coming into a program, graduating out of a program, thriving in life? And we define thriving much more broadly than, say, just academic success or getting a job and getting a financial income. We track thriving as something that's, do I have access to support systems? Do I have healthy relationships around me? Do I have access to safe spaces to live? Do I have access to the job market? Do I have access to learning opportunities? How am I giving back to my community? Do I think about my community, and how do I design my life around my community? So a whole set of factors that help us understand how a young person is thriving. And how a young person is thriving will finally be defined by them. So it's not necessarily that a young person might have come out of, say, financial poverty, but if they have a good quality of life around them, they might say they are thriving. And getting out of financial poverty might take a few more years for them, right? Because they're growing up in very complex adversities.
Correct.
So that's how we track. And then in the government partnerships that we do, the tracking is usually done over a period of time on how the well-being of children has improved, how the life skills of children has improved, and the kind of choices children are making as they're stepping out of school.
And do you also track and ensure that the sustainability of the work that you are doing is really creating a long-term impact? So do you keep an association with each one of these individuals over a period of time?
We try to. It's not always easy to track them once they graduate out of a program, because they change addresses, they change numbers. But like I said, that we've been tracking about 17,000 graduates over the last 10 years, and we track them through quarterly calls and then alumni engagement programs, and through research studies that we do. So, one of the things that we've been researching over the last 7-8 years is the whole idea of thriving. And this is research through ethnographic studies. It's research through stories of change of young people. It's now research. We're doing a massive long-term research study on what does thriving mean for each of the young people that are graduating from our programs. What does thriving mean for young people in a public education system? And with this, we're working with international agencies, universities in partnership to understand this idea of thriving. So there's a lot of research that happens in the background to track the long-term impact on these kids. And one of the reasons this is important for us is so that we can feed this research back into the sector.
Correct.
So that other organizations could also take this research and redesign or further strengthen their programming around the idea of thriving for every child.
Interesting. The other aspect, Vishal, I've often wondered is that for all children, parents, society, elders, and culture plays a very major role. I wanted to ask you, what are your perspectives on how do you engage the local community, especially when you're working with their children?
Yeah. That's a great question, Ashutosh. Again, one of the insights we've had is that for every child, having at least one powerful adult relationship is a game changer. That could be either a teacher or an older sibling or a parent or someone in the community that they look up to. So our efforts have been focused on, because we work in public education systems, around how do we transform teachers. So a big part of our work today is in working with teachers. We've now, in the last 10 years alone, worked with about 45,000 odd teachers across India on how to help teachers recognize their own sense of kindness and empathy. And how do teachers unlock their creativity in the way they're engaged with children in their classrooms? So we have a pedagogical approach and a training design to help teachers unlock that creativity, unlock that empathy. In terms of parents, a big part of our work actually happened through COVID and now post-COVID, when parents did become the primary teachers for their kids at homes. So this has been a bit of working with governments using technology, using WhatsApp, using Facebook, using YouTube. So in many of the states we work with the government on helping develop short activities that can be sent to parents that they can use with their own children at homes, but also with children in the neighborhood. Uh, in our own thriving program in Bangalore, when we work with schools, we engage the larger community around the school from where the kids come. So through parent-teacher meetings, through specific programs for parents, through parents undergoing certain specialized life skills programs, so that parents can recognize the power that they have in shaping their children.
Very interesting. So we shall have time for two more questions for you. My next question is that are there any specific policy level changes that you believe are necessary to better support children and young people from vulnerable backgrounds?
Oh, absolutely. I think one of the things we've been driving towards in our advocacy efforts is really redefining the core purpose of education. Education over the years has become highly standardized, one size fits all, focused on academic success and attainment of financial freedom. Education for the poor has actually become highly reductionist, which has become that as long as at least the poor kids get numeracy and literacy skills, we're fine. Now, imagine a kid studying in school for 13, 14 years and coming out with bare minimum literacy and numeracy skills. That's not going to help the kid to truly thrive in the world. So education today is failing 80% of our kids, irrespective of the backgrounds they come from. And the only way to ensure that education starts working for every child is to redefine the core purpose of education to the idea of thriving.
Right.
And at the core of thriving is this idea of helping every child learn to own their own story, whether they come from backgrounds of abuse or violence or poverty or displacement or abandonment. How can they learn to own that story, but not necessarily have that story define their future? How they can learn to use that story to define a whole different future for themselves. Right. So then ideas of well-being, ideas of having capacities and life skills, ideas for social, emotional learning, focusing on mental health, those become core ideas that we need to integrate into education. Ideas of equity and dignity and inclusion. How do we demonstrate these to children in school as they're growing up? So they grow up to be fully functional adults who can actually not just do well for themselves, but also help shape a better society.
Fascinating.
Right?
Fascinating. Thank you. Great response. And my last question to you, Vishal, and this is that, given all the work that you've done with so many children, can you share a memorable moment or an experience that you've had working with these children or young people?
Yeah, so many of them. Well, one of the ones that I really like sharing is I was working with this young man who was 10 years old. He was in a residential school that we used to partner with, and we started a field hockey program. So a whole bunch of kids, including him, joined the program. He was doing reasonably okay, but he had a violent streak. So every time he got into a conflict, he used to start fighting with other kids. And once he got so angry that he used the hockey stick to hit another kid and break his head. So we were very young in our own understanding. We didn't know what to do, but we had an empathetic coach. And he said, no point taking him out of the program. That's not going to solve the problem. He will have to take accountability for his actions. So the coach said he'll get 30 minutes of extra practice every day. And in those 30 minutes, the coach used to give him 25, 30 balls and said, hit them as hard as you can, but each ball has to go inside the goalpost.
Okay.
Now, what the coach knew, which we didn't know then, was that he had found a way to channelize his anger into the sport. And within about 6 to 8 months, he became the best hockey player that we had in the team.
Wow.
A year later, he disappeared from school, and the school didn't know where he went. We didn't know where he went. We found that he lives in this particular neighborhood in Bangalore. So me and a volunteer then on a Sunday morning decided to go find him. After searching for about 4 or 5 hours in that community, we managed to see him. But what was amazing about that moment was that when he saw us, he was in shock. He did not believe that anyone cared enough to come looking for him.
Wow.
And he had, of course, been beaten up by his father and I told to drop out of school and go to work. But in that moment, when he saw someone actually come looking for him, he decided that he's going to go back to school and finish school. He made a commitment to himself. So he went back to school, finished college. He's 30 years old now. He's married, has a kid of his own. He joined us as a life skills facilitator when he turned 18. Today, he's a filmmaker, photographer, communication specialist. But I remember when he worked as a facilitator with us, one evening he came back from his session with the kids and said, I've realized something today and I want to share it with you.
Mm.
He said, when I was a kid, I used to wait for the time when I'll grow up and become big and strong so that if my father tried to hit me or my brother or my mother, I could stand up to him.
Wow.
But today I realized that I'm actually not angry with my dad. That the kind of opportunities and relationships that I got, maybe my father didn't have as a child, which is why he became who he is. So I feel empathy for him today. I understand him much better today. Now, for me, that is truly a representation of our work. Right? That's what we're really trying to do, that, young people grow up to become good human beings.
Absolutely. What a powerful story. I sincerely hope one day you will write a book with all the experiences you've had, because these are such powerful stories that will educate people. But on that note, Vishal, thank you so much for talking to me about your own journey, what got you started in the social sector. Thank you for talking to me about Dream a Dream and about all the amazing initiatives that you've had and you're taking for young people, for children. Thank you also for sharing with me at such length about some of your plans and about all the great work that you and your team and volunteers are doing. Thank you for speaking to me and good luck to you.
Thank you, Ashutosh. It's a pleasure being here, and thank you for your thoughtful questions.
Okay. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.